One and iPlayer.
This is BBC One and the time is 9 o'clock. An eventful week of political change to discuss this Sunday with Laura Kuenssberg.
Good morning. Liz Truss's first Chancellor lasted 38 days. This morning, we'll hear from the new one. But the worries about bills, interest rates and the economy are the same. This week has been chaos. You may well ask, who is in charge? Is she?
We need to act now to reassure the markets of our fiscal discipline.
He's certainly not anymore.
Should the Prime Minister go next, Mr Kwarteng?
Kwasi Kwarteng got off the plane to get sacked.
Is the Prime Minister next, Mr Kwarteng?
Do you have any faith that you'll be able to restore the financial markets, sir?
Is it him, the fourth Chancellor, in 4 months? His first act was to ditch Liz Truss's plans.
We're not going to be able to cut taxes as quickly as we wanted to, and some taxes will have to go up.
Or are we all now at the mercy of the mighty markets?
Don't prolong the pain.
You wouldn't be the only one to wonder what on earth is going on.
Oh, it's a great pleasure.
Anyway.
So we've one big question this morning. Who is really in charge? This morning we'll hear from the man tasked with saving the economy and Liz Truss's premiership, her new Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt. And as Labour keep hold of their huge lead in the polls, we'll hear from the man who wants to be in charge of business in this country, the Shadow Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds. And we'll hear from the husband and wife team who designed the first COVID vaccine, Pfizer-BioNTech's professors Ura Shahin and Özlem Türeci, who say a cure for cancer is within their grasp. And joining me on the panel throughout the programme is the chair of Tesco, John Allen, the trade union Unison's General Secretary, Christina McAnee, and the former Health Secretary, now on the backbenches, Matt Hancock. A very good morning to you. Now, throughout Brexit, throughout Jeremy Corbyn, throughout the last financial crisis, I'm not sure I've ever seen a week like the last 7 days. A total smash-up of politics and economics. A mess engulfing a new Prime Minister just weeks into her job. Also this morning, though, you will want to watch the interview with those two incredible BioNTech scientists behind the first COVID vaccine, who now have hopes their technology could transform cancer treatment as well. That will be in about half an hour. But we've got to start with the political meltdown that it's been hard to ignore or to look away from. Matt Hancock, I know you've been in your constituency in Suffolk this week. What have people been saying to you about what's going on?
Well, it's clear to everybody that this needs fixing, it needs sorting. We've got a very significant political problem, and that's as a result of a set of policies that were uncosted and unfunded, and that approach was never going to work, and it hasn't worked. And I'm very glad that the government is now committed to the sort of financial discipline that is absolutely necessary and bread and butter to any Conservative administration. And we can set aside, once and for all, these ideas that you can go for unfunded policies and that they might work. And it was funny, in the intro you said who's in charge of the financial markets. Well, they are our creditors. They're the people who we've borrowed from. So, of course, you have to take them into account. You don't want to, but it's a reality.
And we'll come to that a bit later, but you can see how the front pages this morning are doing more than just saying it needs to be fixed. Some of them are suggesting there might have to be a new Prime Minister, because people in your party are. I mean, look there, the front of the Sunday Express, revealed secret plot to oust the PM. The Sunday Times suggesting it's Jeremy Hunt in charge now. The Observer saying Tories in talks to oust Truss. Now, John, you're the chair of one of the biggest businesses in the UK. What's been on your mind as watching the last few days?
Well, I think it's important, Laura, that we focus on how all of this is impacting on people. I think the personalities and politics I'm happy to leave to everyone else to sort out. But the reality is that the movement in interest rates is now going to lead to much higher mortgage rates for millions of people, predicted 7 million people facing doubling of their mortgages by the end of 2024. Lots of people, I think, are struggling with the existing elements of the cost of living crisis, food and so on. And I think we have while the politicians are getting on with sorting the politics, we've got a moral responsibility to actually look after the people who, in the real world, who are being impacted by this.
Christina, what would that mean? I mean, a moral responsibility?
Well, I agree with John. It does feel that this is serious. This isn't the time for the Conservative government to start playing, musical chairs with who's in charge and who's not in charge. It's far too serious for that. And actually, nobody voted for this. They have no mandate for this. We've had 12 years of a Conservative government, and Liz Truss comes in. Not only does she trash the economy, she trashed their own party's record by the things that they were saying in terms of what's been happening over the past 12 years. It's time for a complete change of direction and to give the British public a chance to vote on this.
Well, what's interesting this morning, inside some of the papers in both the Mail and also in the Sun, they're both suggesting, actually, we can look at those editorials there, they're not quite calling for Liz Truss to go, but they seem to be inching that way, and that's important because they were supportive of the Prime Minister. I mean, Matt, just hearing Christina and John, union leader and business boss, basically saying, you guys have got to just sort this out because people are suffering. Do you feel embarrassed?
Well, I feel like it needs sorting. I think there have been signs that things are moving in the right direction. We're going to hear from Jeremy Hunt later. What is absolutely critical is to get that credible economic plan in place. That's the bread and butter of Conservatism, is to have credible economic plans, because what we want to do is improve the life chances of people across the country, just as John was saying.
But are you embarrassed by what's going on? Because I think a lot of our viewers will just have watched the last 7 days and thought the Conservative Party is again in this kind of turmoil. They can't sort each other out, they can't get on, they can't decide what they want to do, and they're now contemplating changing leader.
Well, I do think that coming together and having that unity as a party is incredibly important. So you won't hear me saying things like that we need to get rid of the Prime Minister now and all of that. What I think is that we need to get the plan in place and we need to bring the party together behind that. But to get unity, you need to earn unity, and that takes leadership, and that is what we're going to need through tough times.
We'll talk to you more about that later, but Christina.
So this isn't about the Conservative Party, this is about the country, and that's the problem we've got at the moment, is the Conservative Party are only concerned with how will they survive the next election, how will their reputation look. I mean, basically they've lost the reputation of being, fiscally competent. And now is not the time for them to continue to play games. We need grown-ups in charge of the country, and that, is not, at this point in time, not the people who are in charge of the Conservative Party.
Well, tons more from you guys a bit later in the programme, but we've been meaning to say for a while, we've had a few things on this programme. If you want to get in touch, we would love you to. You can email us at kuenssberg@bbc.co.uk. We'd love to hear your ideas, thoughts on what they're all arguing about. And on social media, you can use the hashtag BBC Laura Kay. And if you're one of those people who likes to know what everyone else is thinking and get analysis as we go along, the BBC News live page is there for you. You can see the address at bbc.co.uk/news. Now, in a moment, as we've said, we'll hear from the Chancellor. Yep, the fourth one in 4 months. The man who's trying to salvage the government's reputation. But before we do, so much has happened this week, your head might be spinning. I think mine has. So buckle up. Let's remind ourselves what has been going on. It was only on Wednesday that Liz Truss went to see King Charles after Prime Minister's questions to be greeted with this.
Prime Minister, Your Majesty.
Your Majesty, lovely to see you again. Oh, it's a great pleasure.
Anyway.
Since then, things have gone from bad to worse. On Thursday, Kwasi Kwarteng went to Washington for a meeting of financial leaders just as his plans were taking a battering from the markets. He was sure, though, he was staying put.
You'll be Chancellor and Liz Truss will be Prime Minister this time next month.
Absolutely 100%. I'm not going anywhere.
But that night, he was summoned home on a flight to be sacked in person. Liz Truss hired his replacement, Jeremy Hunt, who we'll hear from in a few seconds, on Friday morning, but then took part in a deeply surreal press conference where she said her mission remains.
Well, my priority is making sure we deliver the economic stability that our country needs. That's why I had to take the difficult decisions I've taken today. The mission remains the same.
Does it? Really? When the Chancellor has junked so much of her plan? Well, I sat down with the new occupant of number 11 and asked him who's really in charge.
Well, I was pretty surprised, to be perfectly honest. I've been pretty happy on the backbenches for the last few years, but I'm in public service. There is a very difficult job to be done right now, and I talked it through with the Prime Minister, and I wanted to check that she was happy that I'm totally honest with people about the challenge, and we are going to have to take some very difficult decisions, both on spending and on tax. Spending is not going to increase by as much as people hoped, and indeed we're going to have to ask all government departments to find more efficiencies than they had planned. And taxes are not going to go down as quickly as people thought, and some taxes are going to go up. So it's going to be very, very difficult, and I think we have to be honest with people about that. But the one thing I want to reassure families who are worried at home is that our priority, the lens through which we're going to do this, is a compassionate Conservative government, and top of our mind when we're making these decisions will be struggling families, struggling businesses, the most vulnerable people, and we'll be doing everything we can to protect them.
I mean, it feels that the financial markets have been pushing the government around. Do you think they're holding the UK hostage?
Well, no government can control the markets. No chancellor should seek to do that.
It feels a bit like they're controlling the government, the other way around.
Well, there is one thing we can do, and that's what I'm going to do, which is to show the markets, the world, indeed people watching at home, that we can properly account for every penny of our tax and spending plans. And I think for people who've got mortgages, who want to know that as interest rates go up all around the world, they're going up by the absolute minimum necessary in this country as well, they need to know that we're giving that certainty to the markets, and that's really the most important thing to do over the next 2 weeks.
But why do you think you have that ability to calm everything down? I mean, when the Prime Minister announced you as Chancellor, and when the Prime Minister said the corporation tax cut would be dropped, still at that moment, the cost of borrowing went up and the pound went down. Now, the markets have already given an instant verdict on her massive U-turn, and indeed on your appointment. Are you confident the markets are actually going to believe you? Why can you give that reassurance?
Well, I think, you know, for people trading in markets, actions speak louder than words. The Prime Minister has changed her Chancellor. We are going to have a very big fiscal statement, a bit like a budget, in which we set out the tax and spending plans for several years ahead, and that's going to be independently verified by the Office for Budget Responsibility. We've been honest that it was a mistake not to do that in the mini-budget before, and that is now going to be sorted out.
Now, I know that you believe in transparency and honesty. You said you told the Prime Minister that you would be honest. Where are you going to cut public spending?
Well, I want to be very honest about that, but it's going to be 2 weeks on Monday in the House of Commons.
And they're going to affect every single government department. Every single bit of government spending is again on the table for potential cuts.
I'm going to be asking every government department to find further efficiency savings.
And can you today rule out dumping the other tax cuts that Liz Truss has promised people?
I'm not taking anything off the table. I want to keep as many of those tax cuts as I possibly can, because our long-term health depends on being a low-tax economy, and I very strongly believe that.
It sounds, Chancellor, like you're preparing the country for a period of real hardship when mortgages are going to go up, rents are going to go up, and public services are going to be stretched and squeezed again. I mean, this is a return to austerity, isn't it?
Well, I was in the Cabinet in 2010 when we had that first period of austerity. I don't think we're going to have anything like that this time.
But what wasn't happening at that period is that people were not seeing their mortgages go up, people were not seeing their rent go up, people were not seeing interest rates on the way up. Isn't this going to be worse? Because at the same time as public services are going to be stretched and squeezed, and I know you want to be honest about this, but people in their own lives are also going to see their own costs going up and up and up, whether they're trying to put food on the table, trying to buy a house, or trying to pay their business loan.
Well, the two things that I want to reassure people is, first of all, when it comes to people's mortgages, it's obviously a huge worry. Interest rates are going up around the world because of what's happening in Ukraine and the post.
But we both know specifically more here because of the decisions that have now been ditched.
Well, if I take the difficult decisions that I'm talking about, that is the best possible way to stop interest rates going higher than they absolutely need to because of these global factors. So that's the best thing I can do to help people worried about their mortgage. For people who are on the breadline, finding life extremely difficult, to those people I want them to know this is a compassionate Conservative government, and we will be thinking about them at the top of our mind as we make these difficult decisions.
But for people watching at home, we've already lost count of the number of U-turns from this government. And you've said very clearly this morning that much of what Liz Truss promised the public is now gone, disappeared, ditched. Why can't people now trust anything that this government says?
Well, she's been Prime Minister for less than 5 weeks. And I would just say this, that the central insight that she campaigned on during her leadership campaign, and the reason that I am honoured to serve as her Chancellor, is that economic growth is the key thing that we need, unlocking that paradox so we can move from 0.5% to 1% economic growth to 2% to 2.5% growth.
But that's like saying that everyone wants milk and honey coming out of the taps. I mean, everybody wants the economy to grow. What I'm asking you is why people watching at home this morning can look at what's happened, total chaos in the last few weeks. The Prime Minister again and again changing her mind about things. Why should they now be able to trust what she or what you are saying to them?
Because she's listened, she's changed. She's been willing to do that most difficult thing in politics, which is to change tack. And there's a second reason as well. You say it's milk and honey to talk about wanting economic growth. Well, what we're going to do is to show not just what we want, but how we're going to get there. The start of that will be the difficult decisions we take a fortnight on Monday that show that we can fund everything we want and that we're doing what we can to keep interest rate rises low. But the second half of that will be the broader economic growth plans, the practical things that Conservatives understand can make a real difference to our potential as a country. And you will go ahead,
then you hope still to go ahead with things like easing planning reform, easing red tape on business. Those things are still going to happen, those parts of Liz Truss's agenda?
Well, we are going to go through the whole growth agenda. You've talked about a couple of areas, but I could talk about the potential of our technology industry to be the world's next Silicon Valley, the potential of our life sciences industry to develop new medicines, the fact that we have one of the world's 2 great financial centres. There are lots of things that we can do to turbocharge our economic growth, and that is a central part of what this government will be doing.
The strange thing about this, and I have to say, Chancellor, actually, it's quite staggering, really, a few weeks into a new government to hear you this morning sitting, and for reasons you've explained very clearly, but basically ditching the entire thrust of what the Prime Minister wanted to do with the economy. Who's in charge? You or her?
Well, the Prime Minister's in charge, and
really?
I think it's important when you talk about ditching things. The biggest element of that mini budget was the energy price guarantee, where people's bills were heading for £6,500. That's now going to be capped.
And we've heard from her about that on many occasions. That will make a difference to many people. But her promised tax cuts are now not happening. She promised public spending would not be cut. You're now saying very clearly, for reasons you've explained, that public spending might be cut. She has ditched central parts of her agenda. It's gone. And it seems you're setting much of the direction.
She has changed the way we're going to get there. She hasn't changed the destination, which is to get the country growing. I think she's right to recognise in the international situation, the market situation, that change was necessary, but she is absolutely determined to deliver that economic growth that's going to bring more prosperity to ordinary families up and down the country.
But I know, Chancellor, you're not going to sit there this morning and deny that she's had to ditch much of her programme. You've explained why that's happened, but she has ditched much of her programme. And with so much of her agenda gone, to be blunt, some of your colleagues are saying to me, what is the point of Liz Truss as Prime Minister? The things that she stood for, the things that she campaigned on have gone. And to be blunt about it, she's not there because of her rapport with the public. I mean, look at what's happened in the polls. Many of your colleagues think it's over and that you are coming in as a real sort of last roll of the dice to try to help her out of something that is done.
Well, what I would say to those colleagues is 2 things. The first is that when I talk to my constituents in South West Surrey, what they want is stability, and the worst thing for that would be more political instability at the top, another protracted leadership campaign. I think that's the last thing that people really want to happen. The second thing I'd say is that when it comes to a general election, when the public give their verdict on this government, they will judge us much more on what happens in the next 18 months than what's happened in the last 18 days.
But do you look at Liz Truss in the last few days and think, blimey, there's a confident leader who's got a grip of what's going on in this country?
Well, I think she's been under extraordinary pressure. I know how difficult that job is, having seen many prime ministers at close range over many years. But I would rather a prime minister who recognises when things need to change, is prepared to take difficult decisions. To change your chancellor is a very difficult decision for a prime minister to take. She's been prepared to do that.
You saw Liz Truss yesterday. Well, you spoke to her on the phone. How is she? I mean, you've admitted it's difficult. It's obviously a difficult time.
Well, we've known each other for very many years, and I appreciate the difficulty of the situation. But what I also saw in her was someone who is absolutely determined to do the right thing, and someone who recognises that sometimes that means you're not going to be popular, and someone who recognises that some of the ways she's tried to do things in the last few weeks haven't worked as planned. And she's willing to change, to do that. She wants to get on with the job, and I think we should let her do that.
You're sitting this morning and you're obviously determined to give a message to the country about stability. After the last few weeks, perhaps after the last few years, why would our viewers take seriously a promise from a Conservative politician that they can bring stability? The markets have created turmoil on the markets. There's been Prime Minister after Prime Minister, the psychodrama of the Tory party leadership contest over the summer. Why can you think that you can stabilise things?
Well, politicians can't control markets, and I think it's very dangerous when they start to try to do that. What we can do is speak with total candour about difficult decisions, and I appreciate that I haven't announced those decisions, but I want people to know that we are going to make those difficult decisions in lots of areas, going to affect lots of walks of life, in order to do everything we can as a government to bring back that stability. Now, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. There's now 2 weeks in which we're going to go through a process of doing that. But I think what the country will see at the end of that process is a government that's willing to do the tough and difficult things to secure the long-term prosperity that we all want for our families.
Just finally, if as many of your colleagues believe Liz Truss is on her way out, maybe in a few days, maybe in a few weeks, maybe in a couple of months, you might find yourself in rather an interesting position, a Chancellor, the man next door who's had leadership ambition before. Would you run again?
I think, having run 2 leadership campaigns, and by the way failed in both of them, the desire to be leader has been clinically excised from me. I want to be a good Chancellor. It's going to be very, very difficult, but that's what I'm focusing on.
What kind of Chancellor will you be? A Nigel Lawson, a George Osborne, what kind of character?
Well, I'd be honoured to be compared to either of those 2 Chancellors, but I think right now what people want is an honest Chancellor.
Have they not had that?
No, I don't say that at all about my predecessor. He tried to do some bold things. Some of them didn't work out. But we have a very, very challenging situation. And I think above all, people want candour.
Jeremy Hunt, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Jeremy Hunt, who right now I think is on his way to Chequers to try and find a way out of the crisis with the Prime Minister. Matt Hancock, is Liz Truss the best person in the country to be Prime Minister right now?
Well, yes, I think that the idea of yet more instability and a protracted leadership campaign is not what anybody's looking for. I think people will be very reassured by that interview with the Chancellor because he was really clear about the vital importance of getting a stable financial footing, which is the bedrock of all good policy.
But that wasn't my question, and I noticed that you said nobody wants a protracted leadership contest. A lot of your colleagues are thinking about something rather different. The Tory party, behind closed doors, thinking this is such a mess, we have no option but to choose somebody together and to try to install them to get yourself out of this hole.
Well, I don't think we're there yet. I think that the Prime Minister needs to do 3 big things, and you could see from that interview she's already started to do the first. The first thing is an economically credible plan. And that means in a fortnight, the plan needs to show debt falling, It needs to show not borrowing for current spending. You can't borrow on the never, never. And if anybody thought that you could, the last 6 weeks have shown that that is totally impossible. The second is she needs to bring the broad Conservative Party into her government.
So
she needs a reshuffle, because the reshuffle that she started her administration with, she took the decision, which was respectable but high risk, to only put in the cabinet people who had voted for her, and that means that that's only a third of the Conservative Party in Parliament. There's a huge amount of talent on the backbenches. I'm not talking about me, but there are many others who should be brought into government. The third is she needs to restore trust with the voters, but also not slagging off the institutions that are the bedrock of prosperity. Organisations like the Bank of England, like the Office for Budget Responsibility, like the IMF, you just can't go around saying that they've all got it wrong.
But Matt Hancock, that is a long list of demands.
Yes, but
and also some of your colleagues think that it might be too late. I mean, if you look at the long read inside of the Sunday Times today, with a litany of chaotic, rude, unpleasant briefings suggesting the party is at each other's throats and that somehow her administration is broken. And I note that you said we're not yet at the point of a leadership contest. If Liz Truss does not do those three things that you've just called for, can she stay on?
I think these are the things that she needs to do. But she's already actually demonstrated last week.
You are very clearly here setting out conditions. You're putting her on notice if she doesn't do those things. I know you're not saying she can stay.
No, I'm not. I'm not putting her on notice. I'm not getting into the question of changing the leadership. I do not think we need to do that, because I think we need unity. But what we do need is this plan to be executed. Now, the Prime Minister has already made a very big shift in moving towards a position of economic responsibility, and she set it out herself, and her new Chancellor is clearly on that track.
And then I want to bring the others in, but I must also say to you, though, if people who are Conservative members and people in the right of the Conservative Party who voted for Liz Truss, who wanted a big shake-up, who have looked at the last 10 years and thought there hasn't been growth, it's all been a bit kind of soggy centre, what do you say to them? Because they feel let down, they feel cross and betrayed.
Yes, I understand that there are people who, in good faith, have made arguments about a sort of libertarian economic policy for many, many years. I've always been of the view that you need fiscal responsibility first. Now, we've tested those arguments about economic libertarianism and borrowing with unfunded, uncosted tax cuts. I've always argued against them. It is now self-evident, and for a generation nobody's going to try that again, because it didn't work.
Failed, in your view.
Because you have to maintain the confidence of the country, of the financial markets, of the parliamentary party in order to govern. And so, therefore, let's get to the core economic values of all conservatism, which is that you put responsibility first and you allow people to build prosperity.
Well, I'm not sure it actually would represent all Conservatives. I think some people might disagree. But anyway, there's tons to talk about. Christina, we want to talk about what you're involved in as well. But first of all, I noticed during some of that interview, your eyebrows were shooting up to the heavens. What was on your mind?
I was just thinking we don't need to have a protracted leadership election. We should just call a general election.
But they're not going to do that, though, are they? Is it realistic for people on the left to be calling for an election?
How can she stay on as Prime Minister? I mean, she's fatally damaged. She has no credibility. How she can distance herself after sacking her Chancellor, who the two of them worked in tandem to present this ludicrous, huge gamble that almost ruined the country. And now she thinks she can stay on as Prime Minister. And I'm sorry, I think the Conservative Party has to, actually tell her that she just can't do that.
But John, from the boardroom, do you look to Westminster across from the city and think this government's got any credibility?
I mean, it's hard to see it at the moment. I mean, I was encouraged by the interview with the new Chancellor that, we might move into an era of economic responsibility, which were words that Matt used. I mean, the implication of that was, of course, that we had an era of economic
austerity.
Irresponsibility.
But we may have some very hard things coming down the track.
But I think there are three absolute imperatives. One, we get to stability, because that will start to pull interest rates down and probably start to restore the currency, which is something that's really causing problems at the moment. Two, we actually look after the people who are currently most suffering. I've said that before. And three, that, you know, it's not enough to talk about growth. People have got to demonstrate how they are going to achieve it. We've had 10 years or more of poor relative growth.
Let's talk about one of those things that you mentioned there, the interest rates. So I want to play to people what the Bank of England governor said yesterday about what might happen next.
We will not hesitate to raise interest rates to meet the inflation target. And as things stand today, my best guess is that inflationary pressures will require a stronger response than we perhaps thought in August.
Well, that means, John Allen, in other words, they're going up and up and up. What's going to happen to house prices? What's going to happen to people's ability to get a house?
It will obviously have an impact on house prices and in the short term on mortgages. But I think if in the long term we create the reality that we have got stability, in the longer term interest rates will come down, which is what we need, provided we have got a government, whichever party it is, that can clearly demonstrate that it's going to be different in the future than it's been in the last 10 years. We have slipped down the economic. I saw a league table the other day that said, you know, Ireland is now number 4 in terms of GDP per head. We are number 34. You know, we have way underperformed for a very long period of time, and changing that is going to be difficult. Now, I'd like to hear from the government after they've got through the thing at the end of October, very quickly, what's their concrete plan for growth? I think Labour are already starting to set out a plan for growth. They've at least put their ideas on the table, and you'll hear more from Johnny Reynolds.
And we'll hear from Johnny Reynolds, the Shadow Business Secretary, in a second. But just, you've acknowledged very clearly, and it sounds like you're very worried, actually, about what a lot of your customers might experience in the next couple of months. But Tesco, I think your projected profit, I think, is around £2.5 billion. I mean, would it be possible for big businesses to maybe absorb more of the cost, to take on more of the pain?
We are. We've taken our forecast of profitability down. We're trying
to £2.5 billion.
Yeah, it was more than that. But you know, that's on over 50 billion of sales. It's under 5%. There are a lot of businesses that are more than that. We're doing the very best we can for our customers to hold down prices. We're doing the very best we can for our colleagues. We're the largest private sector employer in the UK, over 300,000 people. We've just had another wage increase for the people on the shop floor because we recognise that they are really being adversely impacted.
Well, let's talk about pay then. So, Christina, you are balloting your members at Unison, more than 1 million people, for the possibility of strike action. And there's a lot of worry about more disruption. Sharon Graham, one of your union colleagues at Unite, talking about the possibility of coordinated action. It's on the front page of the People newspaper this morning, talking about maybe 1 million people going out on strike this autumn. What's going on?
Well, I mean, I genuinely think strikes are a symptom of a problem. They don't cause the problem, they're actually a symptom. And this talk about, you know, it's the trade union, I mean, even the rhetoric we get, you know, trade union barons and all this, it's people who take strike action, and they do so once they've jumped through loads of hoops because we have very strict legislation.
But what is it you're asking for then? So
we're asking for pay to keep pace with inflation, or at least to give people a decent pay increase that means they can live. I mean, John's already said, him and I know several other of the big retail organisations have given people 2 pay rises this year. Well, my members who work in the NHS, the nurses, the physiotherapists, the cleaners, the healthcare assistants, have been given £1,400 flat rate. That's nothing for most of them. I mean, if you're in the kind of main band of the main group of sort of professional staff, the nurses, the physios, etc., the ambulance workers, that's about 4% of a pay increase.
But is it really what the country needs? I think some people watching this morning will be thinking, this is a really hard time. The last thing that we need are people causing disruption by going out on strike.
And you know what, Laura, that would be true if it hadn't been for the past 12 years that we've had where pay has not kept pace with inflation. So pay's been depressed, pay's been kept down. We were told in the first 5 years of austerity we're all in this together. Well, really, what has that delivered for public services? And this idea that that somehow public services are a drain in the economy is so untrue. Public services help to revitalise the economies in local areas, because if you give people who work there money, they'll spend it in Tesco.
And just briefly, if you do end up going to the picket lines, if there are strikes across the health service, would you want the Labour Party and the Labour front bench to be with you on the picket line?
It's a total distraction, I think.
That wasn't my question. Would it be helpful to your cause if Labour was with you?
I don't think it would make the slightest difference. I mean, I'd like them as a party to be with us, and I think they will be in terms of fighting for better pay. Whether they physically turn up on a picket line, is immaterial, because when you go on strike and you're on a picket line, it's not a game, it's not there for a photo op, it's there because people are trying to make a point and get decent pay for themselves.
Okay, thank you all very much for now. We'll be back with you in a bit, and we'll be back to politics later. It's never very far away after all. But let's talk about something different that has affected every single one of us in the last couple of years. The number of people who have got COVID has been going up again. Let's have a look at the latest figures from the Office for National Statistics that say that around 1.7 million people had it in the UK. Now, that is not a reason for panic. We are not back where we were during the pandemic, and there are signs that this may have peaked this time round. But we all know how much the NHS is already stretched with us heading into winter. And as we talked about last week on the show, senior doctors have already been warning us to take care when visiting elderly relatives. That's Susan Hopkins, one of the government scientists, who said if you're not well, you should avoid contact with elderly people or those more likely to have severe disease. Yet nearly 90% of us have had 2 doses of the vaccine, and the autumn booster programme is underway. And remember, though, how it changed everything when the vaccines were first discovered. We've been talking to the remarkable couple behind one of the most successful vaccines, Professors Ura Shaheen and Özlem Türeci, who worked on COVID and who still are working on trying to combat cancer. Do they think the pandemic is over?
We don't have a crystal ball, and we would not dare to speculate in any way. We on our side make sure that we are prepared for anything which could happen, monitor new emerging variants, try to understand what extent of danger they could be or could not be.
And the worst could be that a new variant could come out, and we can reduce the likelihood by wearing masks, because every individual who is infected is a motor for the evolution of the virus.
And should people then still wear masks in public places or when travelling? Should governments still be encouraging people to do that?
We are doing that.
We are doing that, yes. We are doing
that. Everywhere you go, or just in your workplace? It's interesting.
In public places and places where there is too much of an accumulation, gathering of people, in particular people who have been travelling, for example, and had been exposed to potential sources of virus.
On the COVID vaccine, how have you reacted to people spreading information against vaccines, saying that vaccines don't work, the anti-vax movement that's grown up? How have you responded to that?
The way scientists always respond, to continue to do their work and to be very transparent with their findings and the data.
Are you concerned at how some of the nonsense has spread so freely? Should social media companies do more to stamp out on that misinformation?
We need definitively ways to ensure that the true information is spread faster and more effectively as wrong information. Yeah, so this, you can even see that as a scientific challenge, how to ensure that to mark false information and ensure that this type of information is not further spreading. Yeah.
You're known around the world for creating a COVID vaccine, but seeking a cure for cancer has really been your life's work. What was your motivation to do that?
We are physicians by training, and when we were young, we were treating patients, oncology patients with advanced cancer, and we experienced that most of the times we had to tell our patients that there was nothing we could offer them, and we could only endure these sad situations because we were leading a double life. By day we were working on the cancer wards, and in the evenings we were working as scientists, as immunologists at the bench, and were encountering the beauty of science and of immunology. And that was the motivation for us to ask the question, how can we bring science, our science, to the patients.
Now, can you explain simply how the technology that you developed works?
mRNA acts as a blueprint and allows you to tell the body to produce the drug or the vaccine, which you would otherwise produce externally in bioreactors, for example. And when you use mRNA as a vaccine, what you basically do is that the mRNA is the blueprint for the wanted poster of the enemy. In this case, cancer antigens, which distinguish cancer cells from normal cells. And we first invested our research towards finding and defining those cancer antigens, which allow us to paint the wanted poster. And then we used mRNA to communicate them to the patient's immune system.
So if I've understood this correctly, your cancer vaccine would train the body to attack the cancer itself.
Yes, to recognize and attack the cancer. The goal that we have is can we use this vaccine approach, this individualized vaccine approach, to ensure that after surgery, directly after surgery, patients receive a personalized, individualized vaccine, and we induce an immune response so that the T cells in the body of the patient can screen the body for remaining tumor cells and ideally eliminate this tumor cells and thereby reduce or completely inhibit the metastatic relapses, which would come 2 or 3 years later.
And some people in the scientific community are still skeptical about whether mRNA will provide an answer for cancer. Is there still a chance that it doesn't work, it doesn't achieve the goal that you hope for?
I don't think so, because everything we have learned about the immune system and about what we achieve with a cancer vaccine shows in principle the clear activity. We can induce those killer T cells, we can direct them. The question is how, with which type of other interventions do we need to combine this, and what else do we need to tweak in order to have, at the end of the day, really patients' cure, patients' survival.
When do you believe this might be, cancer vaccines might be something that many patients around the world would be able to access?
We believe that this will happen definitively, even in broader scale, before 2030.
The success of the technology you've worked on for years was proven to the world with your COVID vaccine. Could a positive of the pandemic actually be that you find a way of defeating cancer more quickly than you otherwise would have done?
Yes, this is actually very interesting. What we have developed over decades in cancer, for cancer vaccine development, has been the tailwind for developing the COVID-19 vaccine, and now the COVID-19 vaccine and our experience in developing it gives back to our cancer work. We have learned how to better, faster manufacture vaccines. We have learned about, in a large number of people, how the immune system reacts towards mRNA. And not only we, also regulators have learned about mRNA vaccines and how to deal with them, so that this will definitely accelerate also our cancer vaccine.
And you said before, I asked you, did you feel a cure for cancer is in your grasp?
Yes, we feel that a cure for cancer or to changing cancer patients' life is in our grasp. You know, scientists tend to show humility, because nature and biology has so many secrets, and you only find out about them when you enter this unknown territory on which we have been navigating since 3 decades now. Yeah? Every step, every patient we treat in our cancer trials helps us to find out more about what we are against and how to address that. Yeah? Therefore, as scientists, we are always hesitant to say we will have a cure for cancer. We have a number of breakthroughs and we will continue to work on them.
And what's it like working together as husband and wife? Because you are professor and professor, but husband and wife. Do arguments come to the lab, or arguments from the lab go home? What happens?
It's actually easier than you would think. No arguments at all.
You never argue?
Oh, we have scientific debates, but no arguments.
I must also ask you about something else that's happening with a court case. BioNTech has been hailed with coming up with a vaccine, but Moderna has saying you've used some of their intellectual property to do so. What's your response to that?
We can't publicly comment on that.
Okay, but I must ask you that they say you copied 2 key elements of their intellectual property. Do you think that you will be able to fight off that claim?
We have made an announcement about this, and I can't comment more than we have already said. Yeah? Our innovations are original. Yeah? We have spent 20 years of research in developing this type of treatments, and of course we will fight for our intellectual property.
Okay. Professor and Professor, thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you.
They're a remarkable couple behind the BioNTech vaccine. A reminder, there's progress and good, exciting things in the world away from what's going on in Westminster, where the wild Conservative psychodrama has been answered by the public, not just with a dip, but a crash in the polls for the Conservatives. There is a clear pattern, for now, that shows Labour well on track to win the next election, whenever it comes. But is the party doing more than profiting at the Tories' chaos? Well, the man who'd be Labour's business secretary if they win is Jonathan Reynolds, and he's here with us in the studio this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Is the new Chancellor right that the state of the economy is such that there will have to be a squeeze on spending and tax rises?
Well, the latest Chancellor, I mean, let's see how long he's in position for. I'm not even sure what this government's economic policy is at the moment. I don't know which bits of the budget still apply, and I don't know what we will hear next week. What I would say is any cuts the Conservative Party brings forward are entirely of its own making, entirely because of its own incompetence. And I would just heed any Conservative MP and ask them, where do they think they're going to find cuts? I mean, look at the state of the NHS, look at the state of the criminal justice system, look at law and order in this country. I don't think they will find that. Now, we can't make decisions, frankly, until we know what the picture is. It's just speculation at the minute. It is clear that the Conservative Party has not just done terrible damage to people's mortgage repayments and to business investment, but to the national finances as well.
And of course, precise numbers by where we may be or not in 23 or 2024 when there's a general election, of course, we cannot be sure of that. What we can be pretty sure of, what the people like the OBR, the IFS, all those acronyms, but they're independent, well-respected number crunchers, they are all clear that there is going to be a significant black hole in the country's finances. So I'll ask again, do you accept that there will have to be either a squeeze on spending, potential spending cuts, or tax rises?
Look, I can't speculate on that. In our plans that we already have put forward, I need to know that. I need to know what... I mean, there's newspaper speculation overnight as to what the scale of the damage might be, but you've got to know that before you make decisions.
But Jonathan Reynolds, that's not speculation about a number here or there. Everybody who's independent, who's looked at the state of the British economy right now, says there's going to be a hole and it's going to have to be filled somehow. So that's a question on principle. Will there have to be a squeeze on spending and tax rises to get us out of this mess?
In the plans that we've already put forward, we are always clear where we wish to increase day-to-day revenue, day-to-day spending, we will increase the revenue that comes in to pay for that. So, for instance, we've said we'd abolish the non-dom rule. That will bring in over £3 billion. We have said we'd tax private equity differently. We have said that private schools wouldn't be charities under
those are
Labour government.
pennies when you look at the scale of this
Well,
suggestion.
if you wish to increase spending, we said we want to increase the NHS workforce, we said we want breakfast clubs for young people, we will always identify the expenditure for that. We are absolutely committed to the fiscal rules that Rachel Reeves has put forward, where we will not borrow for day-to-day expenditure. We do not believe, we have a completely different economic philosophy to this government as to how growth happens, but also how you pay for things. We don't agree with what they've done, borrowing money for tax cuts. And if there's any doubt, it is the fiscal rules that will win out and apply.
And to be clear, that is your rule set by your Shadow Chancellor, where basically you're not going to spend money on the day-to-day stuff.
We're not going to borrow money
borrowing in order to do it.
Stuff. We will borrow to invest as part of our industrial strategy, net zero, and getting good jobs in all parts of the country.
I think it's important, though, for the audience to understand where you stand on what the government is actually doing. So there's a suggestion that the government might not cut income tax from 20p to 19p. We heard from the Chancellor, everything's on the table. If they do not cut that income tax down to 19p, will you support that?
Well, look, our argument on what they brought forward initially has always been that personal taxation is high because growth has been so poor over the last 12 years. Now, look, we will have to see what they bring forward. Again, we honestly don't know what will happen. We'll have to see what the OBR has said. So we'll have to...
Except at your party's conference in Liverpool, Keir Starmer, your boss, said to us very, very clearly that Labour would support cutting that rate of income tax for 20p down to 19p.
We would have, because that is absolutely consistent
will you support
with everything that we have said. That was before the Conservative Party set fire to the British economy, has caused...
But will you tell us whether or not you will support
We will, as soon as we know what the government is doing and what the OBR forecast is. And we've got to base it on real information, not on speculation overnight. I honestly don't know which bits of the budget still apply as we sit here today.
What did Keir Starmer mean when he said yesterday, we should be clear about what fiscal responsibility, we should be clear about what that means? It means not being able to do things, good Labour things, as quickly as we might like. What does that mean?
Well, it means that the scale of the damage the Conservative Party has done is evident to personal finances, to business finances, and to the national finances. Now, look, people know, they don't expect a Labour government can wave a magic wand and fix all these problems overnight, and Keir is just being absolutely level and straight with people about that.
But what does that mean in concrete terms?
It means we can't do everything as quickly as we would like, because there has been a real and lasting impact on the British economy of the incompetence and the disgraceful behaviour of the last 3 weeks. And people know that, but what they want is hope for the future. They want a government that has a real plan for growth, not this trickle-down fantasy that somehow tax cuts for better-off people will pay for that. And there is real commitment to public services and to jobs in this country. They will get that from Labour.
But people will hear, though, that you're not answering that specifically, but it sounds like that message, what Keir Starmer said, basically is a message designed to say, it's going to be tough, we might have to cut spending and we're going to have to put taxes up.
No, it's not about talking about any kind of return to austerity, but it is an acknowledgement. When the last Labour government left office, we were talking about seeing a GP in 48 hours. Now the height of the government's ambition is 2 weeks. You can't turn that round overnight. You can't turn around the delays in the criminal justice system overnight. You can't turn around the problems with, getting the police in your area or responding to crime. But you can have a better plan for the future. You can give people hope for the future. You can make different choices. And that is what people expect from a Labour government, and that's what they will get.
But I think I'm struggling to hear you commit to something being very different. So you say you won't tell us whether or not public spending will be squeezed or cut and taxes will have to go up. And I notice you keep saying we don't know what the government is exactly going to do. But if you can't tell us that central question, whether or not you would cut public spending, aren't people going to be scratching their heads and thinking, well, what is Labour really for?
No, because first of all, we can be confident that growth under Labour would be higher, because it was higher under the last Labour government, and our plans for the economy are about driving up long-term business investment, long-term industrial strategy, fixing business rates, improving our trading relationship with the single market, all things that are real and practical changes that will improve things. And where we want to increase spending, we'll identify where that revenue will come from. That is what people expect. And they don't want vague promises. They don't want, a sense that you can just turn around the sheer scale of the damage that has been done, not just in the last 3 weeks, but over the last 12 years.
But it does sound like, and people may understand why you don't want to make specific commitments now, because there has been so much turmoil, but it does sound like, both by what Keir Starmer said yesterday and what you're saying this morning, is even if you win the next election, people have to understand that it will be a tough outlook that you will not be able, if you're lucky enough to win, to suddenly do what you would like to. You're not going to turn the taps on and suddenly milk and honey will flow across the land.
But no one expects that. They expect a government with a serious plan for growth, which we have. They expect people committed to fiscal responsibility, which we are. They don't expect all the problems to be turned around overnight. Look, the average household is now going to be paying, when they have to remortgage, an extra £500 a month. Of course, that has a huge impact on the economy. You can't turn that around immediately. You can't, once you've lost confidence, which the government have lost the confidence of the people who lend money to the government, you can't just turn that around. It takes time to win that back. But I'll tell you this, no Conservative can restore the confidence that the government has lost in the last 3 weeks. It requires a general election and a fresh start and a Labour government to do that.
OK, well, they would obviously challenge that, but thank you very much for giving us your views, Jonathan Reynolds. Thank you for coming in this morning. Right now, the time is getting towards 10 o'clock, and we've heard some of how Labour says they'd run things differently. But remember, we listened to the new Chancellor earlier, and whoever's in charge, maybe the reality of what's happened to the economy, the tricky issues everywhere, and what's happened in the last couple of weeks means there are hard times ahead.
We are going to have to take some very difficult decisions, both on spending and on tax. Spending is not going to increase by as much as people hoped, and indeed we're going to have to ask all government departments to find more efficiencies than they had planned. And taxes are not going to go down as quickly as people thought, and some taxes are going to go up.
Right, Christina McAnally, you're the head of a big health union, you've got more than 1 million members. Let's have a reality check. How tough do you think this winter's going to be?
It's going to be horrible, quite frankly. But it's not inevitable that it's like that. So we're balloting about 400,000 NHS workers, and we'll be working with the other unions that are also balloting. And if we get a yes vote, and we'll get it in some places, then we will be taking members out on strike. Nobody wants that to happen. And as I say, it's not inevitable. The government could talk to us about it. So we're in the middle of talks in Scotland with the Scottish Government about this. I'm pretty certain that Mark Drakeford in Wales will talk to us about it. But we're getting nothing from this government. They'll find time to go and...
What do you mean nothing?
Well, they won't talk. I've written to Liz Truss. We've contacted Therese Coffey's office. Nothing. And the kind of comment she made the other day there about if nurses don't like it, they should just leave. I don't know whether they're going to magic up all these extra nurses when there's huge shortages.
Well, I'm sure we'll talk about that in the weeks ahead. John, from what you've heard this morning, and I know you follow politics closely, and you're a big businessman, what do you feel convinced by either side? Because you took a pretty dim view of what's been happening in the Conservatives, but having heard from Johnny Reynolds, are you willing to be persuaded?
Well, I think what both parties need to spell out, because we only really have two choices in this country with our electoral system, is a very clear growth plan. Frankly, I don't think we've seen a growth plan from the Conservatives. I hope we will. We have seen the beginnings, I think, of quite a plausible growth plan from Labour. So at the moment, their ideas are on the table, and many of them are actionable and attractive. And I wait to hear what the government has to say in due course. But at the moment, there's really only one team on the field.
Matt Hancock, final word to you. I mean, are you worried that your party is going to be terribly punished at the next election for everything that's happened?
Well, I think it's vital that we sort it out and get ourselves in a position where we can offer hope for the future. You've seen blancmange from the Labour Party and the threat of strikes that would only get worse. And so it's in the national interest that we pull together, we put in place that plan that John was mentioning and that I've been calling for, and we have a credible, positive, optimistic plan that can take advantage of the many positives
Some
that are going on in the world.
people might prefer blancmange to the chaos we've seen from your party in the last couple of weeks.
Well, it's incumbent on us to pull it together, to sort it out, to have that plan and to offer that hope for the future. And I'm absolutely confident we can do that, but we need to make it happen.
OK, well, testing times ahead all round. Thank you, all three of you, so much for coming in this morning. It's been great to have your thoughts. Now, we began by asking who's in charge of the country. And when I asked the new Chancellor if it was him or his boss, he said, maybe not that comfortably, that it was the Prime Minister. But he said too very clearly that Liz Truss has changed. Quite something to hear when she's only a few weeks into the job. But the most extraordinary thing was the new Chancellor junking most of the Prime Minister's plan for the economy. The one she told us about in this studio only a few weeks ago, the one she stood by again 2 weeks ago in Birmingham, the platform that got her elected by the membership of her party just in the summer. But as the markets have battered the government's reputation, her credibility has been stretched to breaking point, as has been made clear in the studio here this morning. The Prime Minister might hang on. Don't be too quick to write her off. But whether she can stay in number 10 may not be down to her, but the markets, her colleagues, her critics, maybe her Chancellor, and of course, all of you. So the answer to our question this morning of who is in charge, as we say goodbye, it's not the Prime Minister on our own. As ever, you can catch up on anything you missed on the iPlayer, and there's tons more on BBC Online. We will definitely be here this time next week. I'm not sure how much else we can know. But thank you so much for being with us this morning. Goodbye.
Fucking hell. Honestly, it's like a Monty Python sketch. It really is. Who's in charge? I don't know. Maybe the million people are going on strike. I think it's going to get worse. We're going to have a general strike. No jokes. General strike. Fucking mad. Like, I've never... This country is so bizarre. Really it is. Imagine owning more planet than anybody else and then resulting to voting for the Tory party and killing your band. That's what we've become. The Great British fucking Empire. No, Great British Satire. That's what it should be called. Fuck it. Let Scotland leave. We'll just fucking rename ourselves a fucking Hobbit land or some shit. That's the place where the hobbits live. Just fucking rename England to that. We're at the far right. I mean, it's not even the far right. They're just fucking mad, loony fucking right wingers, aren't they? Believe in John Adams and all that shit. I mean, oh shit, I just spilled fucking drink. Anyway, yeah, you can hear that's fucking going everywhere. Right, you twat. See, bad luck. Shouldn't swear on a Sunday, my mum would say. Bad luck. You know, shit. Anyway, back to me rant. Fuck it. The Tories, right, or a part of the Tories. Not the fucking psychopathic ones, apparently. We're in power for like 11 years, couple of months, or some shit. Now we've got the fucking Donald Trump fucking loonies in charge. We're basically from America. Because if you look up who funds these fucking right-wing fucking loons, it's the Americans, the same people who fund the fucking Republicans in the United States. You should look it up, it's pretty fucking interesting shit. We've got so many ass clowns. That's why you got like Great British News, and that other fucking one by Rupert Murdoch that's on the internet. Because the internet's cheaper. You don't need to pay a TV license to go on YouTube, motherfucker. And you can say whatever you want on YouTube. I mean, I am, right? So the platform for the right wingers is the internet. I mean, just take a look at fucking Twitter. It's complete dross in it. In terms of, I wouldn't even call them fucking, I was going to say debates, and then I said arguments, and then it's like, yeah, they are arguments, not even debates about economics, because no one knows about fucking economics no more anyway. No one reads a fucking history book. The currency, our entire currency system is based on debt anyway. Fucking entire thing. The markets went fucking batshit because she's batshit. That's why. Wasn't a fucking shock. We made the Bank of England independent for a reason. God bless Golden Brown. Even though we sold our gold to stupid fucking cunt. Anyway. And the IFS. Sounds like someone who wants to sell me a couch. Wasn't that was a TV show back in the fucking day, wasn't it? IMF. The sale that never fucking ends. Anywho. Back to politics. The other thing is, by the way, just on a tangent, because that's what I do. The BBC are fucking horrible, weird cunts when it comes to this entire thing, in terms of reporting it. Did you see she asked them, the Labour fella, the business dude, what are you going to do about the 28 billion quid? Hang on a minute, why are you asking me? Ask the Morans who just made the 28 billion pound hole in the country's fucking bank balance. Like, literally, you would think Labour crashed the pound at this point. But like, what are you going to do about crashing the pound? Whoa. Hang on, I didn't do it. I'm not in charge. What are you fucking on about? It's just bizarre the way that it gets reported as well. Labour haven't been in power for 12 years. And that fella, by the way, Tesco chairman of the Tesco group, whatever the fuck it is. Yeah, he just endorsed Labour because he said there's only one fucking team on the field. Like, that's the way I'm gonna feel when we play Man City later. There's only one team on the field. I don't even want to fucking know the score to that thing. I'm gonna go to sleep and pretend that we're not playing Man City today. Anyway, but yeah, that's basically what's gonna happen. The next election's coming. Now, I don't know whether it's gonna be before Christmas or after Christmas. I've got a sneaky... I should put a tenner on, but I'm not a gambler. I don't like to gamble. I should do something because I make good bets. Anywho, election is going to probably be... I don't know. I'm tempted to say before Christmas, to be honest with you, but because it's going to be cold and dreary and shit, it'll have to happen in the next 2 weeks, at least, because it's fucking cold. They could do like a snap election. It'll only take about a month. I can't see people going out in December and fucking going to... I don't know. What's that? I don't think she can last. That's the fucking weirdest bit. I don't think she can last until... I don't even know when till is. Right now, everyone wants to sack her. But the Tories are going to stick it busy because you can't sack her without the fucking people going mad. And if people go mad, that means you get general strikes. And I think there's going to be general strikes anyway. And possibility of riots. Because we have built our country on homeowners, in case anyone wasn't paying attention since Thatcher, right? The narrative since Thatcher is buy your own fucking home. Every Englishman's house is his castle, as the good old saying goes. Imagine, right, most people right now have got a mortgage that's around fuck all %. Like, literally, it's the cheapest time to own a mortgage in terms of, like, if you're on a fixed rate, because sometimes you get variable rates or whatever. But even then, since last year, it wasn't up that much. Next to a couple of bob, not that much. When this fucking interest rate goes up, it's going up by percentage points. Not increments of a percentage point, which we've had for ages. Like, ooh, to put the fucking interest rate by 0.02%. Nah, it's going to go up by like a point. Maybe more. Because inflation's mad. I don't even know. What is the fucking interest rate now? On the Bank of England, I don't even know. I'd probably have to check. But I'm guessing it's going to go up by at least a point. It's got to. Even maybe higher, which is even creepier. I mean, the trading thing, it's like 4, isn't it? 4 or 5%, or the gilts or whatever. So when we borrow, interest rates go up because everyone has to borrow, right? To match the we'll pay you back thing from the gilts. So if that's a 4, fuck knows what our interest rate's going to be then. And they're going to go pretty fast because the Bank of England was already trying to put them up anyway because of fucking inflation. Now they're going to have to like bump it up a little bit more. Not a little bit. Well, now we've been a mortgage a little bit fucking long enough. But you know what I mean, right? They're going to have to put it up. Fuck me. This is going to get worse before it gets better. And he's talking about cuts. Why didn't you just scrap the entire fucking idea of having a budget in the first place and just go, fuck it, we're done. We made a mistake. Pretend the budget never happened. Everything will go back to normal. They're still talking about tax cuts. Well, how are you still paying for that then if you can't borrow money? You fucking trumps. Well, we're gonna have to pay. We're still gonna do tax cuts, but we're gonna ask the people who are already broke to pay for it. How? Via services. But do you mean cuts to like the healthcare, the police, like they were saying? Yeah. Really? Again? You promised 20. Oh no, we don't. We screwed up at the last moment. No more police for you. Like literally, that's literally more cuts. So basically, we're having a mini austerity session because Liz Truss was elected the Prime Minister. If you think about it, before the Queen died and she was fucking Prime Minister, the only thing that everyone was talking about, cost of living crisis, i.e. energy, right? Now, most people don't give a fuck if you vote Labour or Tory or Lib Dem or SNP or whatever the fuck it is, right? Everybody knew that was a thing. Even the markets knew it's a thing, right? Because we're special with Britain. We don't, apparently, we don't use gas, but we're the country with the most gas boilers in the EU. Just saying. So just think about that right for a second. It's not, we use 3% of Russian gas and we buy it from everybody else, yet because we're the only ones with fucking so many gas boilers still in houses that are decrepit and built in like 1854. Some shit. Right? That's the point. Most of the people in Britain use gas to use their oven or whatever. Not lecky. They use gas. So, yeah. But these are fucking idiots, the Tories. I don't know how they managed to fuck it up so bad. Well, I do, because the Tories, but cutting, like, the idea of cutting taxes is a good idea, right? Cut taxes, yeah, well, makes sense. But you've got to have taxes at, like, proportionate values. I mean, just play SimCity. I mean, fuck's sake, have you ever played fucking SimCity in your life? Probably not. But SimCity's a good idea. It's like you put your business rates this high, and then you build your houses and all that shit, right? And then you're like, oh, I'll put my rates on the posh houses at this much, but I won't put them too high because I want people who graduate from uni to buy a nice house. And then, lo and behold, you get communities of rich people. Why? Because they're highly educated. It's a fucking game, but it's fucking based on real life, right? That's what you do. But you need to give them jobs and good education and healthcare. Or what did they do in SimCity, ladies and gentlemen? They go on fucking strike. That's exactly what they do. That's a computer game that was built in 1998 or some shit. Probably even earlier. Let me think. No, it was about 2012, give or take. Something like that. It's fucking old anyway. And it's called SimCity. It's on a Windows. Is it 5? No, it can't be 5. I'd seen it demoed on Windows 5. 95. Yeah, either Windows 95 or Windows 97, can't remember which one. But it was one of them anyway. It's fucking old. But that makes sense. And if these people can't even get that fucking part right, I don't know what gives. Okay, the only difference between SimCity and real life is they don't have inflation in SimCity. They do, but not like in real life. If you know what I mean. No one's going to invade me on the game, kind of thing, or whatever. Or invade the country. Or fuck with me millions of hydroelectric dams that cost fuck all, or wind power. That's how you used to scam that game, by the way. Just build a big massive mountain on one side of the map and just put hydroelectric dams on it. Then just have a city at the bottom. Free electricity. That's a big bill. Just if you get rid of the big bill of electricity, you can literally spoil your plebs with better schools. I had a perfect city in SimCity. Perfect. Electric power from hydro dams. They only cost me like £40 to build or some shit. Cheap as fuck. Just build a mountain of them. All running down the side of the map. And you'd have a perfect city at the end of the map. Well, just like over there. Easy peasy. Renewable energy. It costs fuck all for the fucking wind to blow. Build more of these fucking wind turbines then. Fill the entire sea with them. No one fucking goes in the sea apart from boats anyway. Just fill the entire planet with fucking wind turbines for all I care. If you can build them that big. Okay, when was the last time you was going to complain there's a wind turbine in the middle of the fucking ocean? Ever? When are you ever going to complain? Build massive fucking huge ones. When El Nino comes and them storms, you'd be able to turn it off. Like shit, there's too much power. Okay, man, I'm just saying, it makes sense. It's free. Now, I know it costs money to build them, but then just pay people to fucking build them. I mean, the Egyptians built the pyramid, and we still don't know why, but they built it anyway. That's impressive. Took more effort to build a fucking pyramid than it does for our stupid politicians to get the thumb out their ass and do something fucking useful. Like, what of our recent... The recent thing we ever done, right, no offense, was go to the moon. That's it. And then we gave up on fucking, I don't know, everything else. Let's go to the moon. That was a great idea. I mean, it was fought out of war. Whatever. The idea was there, though, wasn't it? Go to the moon. Let's do them things. Like JFK. Let's go to the moon. Fuck it. Got nothing else to do. I mean, let's be honest here. Everybody's sitting around waiting for God. Trading. Like, that's literally the fucking basic parameters of our game development cycle. You were born. Great. What are you going to do? Wait. For what? What are we waiting for? Just fucking do some shit. The universe is ginormous. You know, humans have like this low expectation of existence or some shit. That's why people vote Tory. I think weird shit like trickle down economics is a valid fucking idea for how to run a country. So, and this is another good thing, right? People, like there was one person I used to have in my old town, same name. She used to think a family's budget was the same as how a country was fucking run. It was so bizarre. Honestly, I said to her, like, you do know what a fucking family can't print its own currency, right? And this is the thing. These people are free marketeers who run our country. That's what they call themselves, right? Libertarians. Free marketeers. We believe in the free market until the free market turns around and says, where's my money? Where is my money? And they go, oh, we thought you would we was going to borrow it to give you back in tax cuts. And they were like, that sounds like a scam. Because it is. So you're going to borrow my money to give me back at a lower rate in a tax cut because you want investment while I'm lending you the money. That makes no sense. What you should do is tell companies, if you give research and development, i.e. proper shit that companies love because they can patent it, make fuck tons of money, that's when they like investment. Why do you think all the big companies are high tech? Like the proper big companies are high tech, not the plebs. The big high tech companies like fucking aerospace, weapons manufacturers. No one ever talks about them. They're the biggest companies on the planet. War and space at the moment, technically speaking. Like people always think of oil and gas and shit. Now that's true because well, everyone nearly uses it. But in terms of what do the people focus on who are actually rich? Them two things. War, because that's good for business if you're a Ferengi, because humans love war. It's like saying the humans don't want to fucking breathe oxygen. Just saying. Imagine how many missiles getting lobbed and shit in Ukraine. Just saying. Right. And then, space. Why is Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk going? It's like Elon Musk is pretending like we want to go to Mars. Nah. Imagine how rich that's going to make you. That's all I'm saying. And then Jeff Bezos is doing the same thing. They're all doing it. Space is lucrative. Fuck knows we're going to be spaceman in about 10 years. Just grab giant asteroids. Man the fuck out of them. There's asteroids that are close to planet Earth that have got more shit in them than planet Earth itself. Which is a pretty big fucking thing if you ask me. You know what I mean? And if you just watch that fucking mission from NASA, they just twatted a satellite into a satellite because it was going around its parent body. So it's a satellite. Don't know if you get the joke. But anyway, I literally digressed into about a million topics when actually the only thing I want to talk about is these fuckers, the Tories. They've literally fucked us right in the fucking ass, haven't they? Like, no jokes. I reckon, honestly, personally, there's more chance of Scotland leaving the Union than ever before. I literally think if you was to say to any Scottish person right now, do you want to leave the United Kingdom? They'd literally all want to punch it in the face with a yes. Like, I want to move to Scotland at this point, and I don't even like the SNP. But, come on. We are fucking doomed. No, I'll tell you a story. It's not a story. Well, it is. But, when she met the Queen, right? When she met the Queen, and then the Queen died, I was like, that's the worst omen I've ever seen in my life. Now, I'm not superstitious sort of, really. I mean, I'm open-minded, right? I am, clearly, because I watch politics. You'd have to be open-minded to watch politics because it's a bit weird. But when she met the Queen and the Queen died, I was like, we're fucked. She just seems like a bad omen to me. Everything this woman touches turns to shit or dies. Evan. Like Evan. She's just wrong. She's just a wrong one. She should never ever have been given the reins ever. Like when Rishi Sunak is literally busting your ass on a stage. I fuck knows even what Rishi Sunak's thinking. He's probably thinking, lols, I told you. If this was a rap battle, I'd be pissing myself laughing. Like, he would be just eating a... That's a horrible thought. He'd be just out rapping her at this point because she's just terrible. And to be fair, there's loads of good memes on YouTube right now and stuff. Which is hilarious. It's madness. I mean, the world economy's fucked anyway. You know what? Like, people go on, like, okay, I'm gonna go on a little tangent again, might as well. People talk about, like, the economy and go, like, how to grow the economy. Now, for me personally, as the king of Liverpool, which I am, I want my plebs to do well. So I just give them good houses and good education. Because educated people create jobs. No offense to anyone who's not educated, but they do. Right, I mean, it's not because they're better. It's just because they come up with mad ideas and you want to buy it. That's how normally business works, right? When you think about it. Like, you don't know. You couldn't build an iPhone. Somebody else came up with that shit. Right? Computers. Whatever it is, doesn't matter. Okay. The DC motor, the motor, right? Nikola Tesla invented the fucking... Well, he invented electricity, nearly. He did. But the point is... And he died broke. Yeah, he did. But capitalism is not a bad idea in and of itself, right? It isn't. But when you don't have the state to balance out capitalism, that's when it gets fucked, right? So capitalism is a function that humans find optimal, shall we say, right? As things, we find capitalism an optimal, reasonable way, literally, and this is not a joke, for the majority of people to coexist in a happy medium. So everybody's happy that we agree that capitalism, in terms of if you do X, you get Y, and if you do Y, you get X, right? So everyone can agree on that little fucking equation. But the point is, when that equation becomes more complex, more weirder, then people go, I don't even know what that equation means anymore. Right? That's when it gets out of whack. And it can go too far to the other side where you go, that equation is so, like, it doesn't explain. So you could put them things as the left and the right. Right? I'm not saying that they are, but I'm saying is, let's just use that as an example. So you can go too far left where you make everything simple, like you're all going to work and everything's free and you live in a utopia. That's zero fucking equation. Like, there's just a number and you're like, what's that? You know, and then you go to the far right of capitalism and it's like E equals house plus car plus blah plus fucking MF25 squared, whatever that thing is. That's not even a number, it's a shape. You know what I mean? Exactly, right? So you can have two ends of the spectrum. We need a happy medium. And the reason why we need a happy medium is because humans are fucking humans. Right? We have to agree to coexist. That's the entire point. We always like to say we're individuals, rightly so. But at the same time, is you co-inhabit a fucking planet. That is the balance. Duh. I mean, even Mother Nature figures that shit out. And the last time I checked, Mother Nature ain't a brain with a pair of legs in a suit. Right? So there's two sides of this. And people, like, when you see birds fly in the sky, people are like, oh my god, it's Jesus, it's special. Birds can, now we can fly. Right? So the reality is, economics ain't that different. It's Do you want to fuck over everybody else, or do you want everybody else to be equal? And even if we agree that you can make money by being special at certain things, right? Well, I do that. I accept that a doctor should get paid more than someone who cleans a toilet. That's not me being like weird. That's me going, I appreciate he can save my life and he cleans the bog. Right? So that's capitalism right there. That's value. That's what we're doing. We're doing the value equation in capitalism right there. But that's still social because you value that person's effort, right? I'm not saying other people. I'm not saying people are less worth or more worth. But in terms of like, if we're gonna go, okay, capitalism is a thing because of sociology, let alone anything else, then okay, are we gonna base economic theory of how to grow an economy on that shit? Well, it better be a bit of both. It's got to be social, which means that people need to fucking exist. And then on the other side is let people be free to make money, right? Which is the conservative angle. That's fine, being rich. But the other part is, well, in order to get to be rich, you need the social bit, right? Because everybody's social. The fucking clue's in the name at this point. Just saying. So it's a happy medium. But capitalism has to be restrained by people who think capitalism is it, when it's not. It never has been. That's just a dereliction of duty when it comes to reading fucking any historian or any philosopher. Or any psychiatrist, for fuck's sake. Yeah. No, I mean, probably, maybe. They forgot. I'm reading the comments now, actually, because I see people typing. Rich is there, and I can't even say your name because I can't see it. My eyes are so bad. I think I need glasses. Oh my Jesus Christ. Need glasses, ladies and gentlemen. I did it. I've ruined my eyes. That's it. You know what? I'll apply for glasses and they'll say, sorry, in the budget, you're not entitled to glasses. Just get a fucking magnifying glass. Stare through it. Or some shit. Anyway, you know what? Like, I'm just gobsmacked. Like, honestly, this is my new channel. Hello to everybody, by the way. It's new. I thought, like, the new season, I just started streaming. I know I didn't do question time because it was in Scotland, and no offense, I couldn't be asked. I'm just gonna be fucking frank. I just couldn't be asked. Even though there's a good meme about the Tory fella who got laughed at saying Liz Truss is gonna be next, still gonna be prime minister or some shit. Or what? No, sorry, Angus something. His name's fucking Angus, apparently. But anyway, he's the Tory leader in Scotland. Said that Liz Truss can win the next election. That's what he said. He literally said that on question time. Thursday gone. I didn't record it, but I seen a clip. I was like, lol, that's funny. I don't know his actual name. Angus some fucking shite anyway. But yeah, he's the head of the Tories. Funny guy. I mean, that's just bad ass because I've always said this. The people who remind me, who were like politicians and some other people, they remember me being in school. Like, all the fucking little weebly little cunts who you hated at school. You never fucking see them ever again in your life become politicians or a copper or something fucking weird. You just think, you was a twat at school. You were honestly a fucking weasel at school, and you're still a weasel now. But now you're just a cunt on the telly. In terms of like, imagine his mates who went to school who used to bully him. But like, I'm not saying bullying's a good thing or anything. Never hurt any of my victims. But I'm just saying, just imagine being in school and these are your fucking classmates. Like these fucking ass clowns, like him. I'm staring at it. He's there, right? He's tiny, but he's there. Jeremy Hunt, the cunt. I mean, someone just said before, that guy whose fucking name I can't pronounce or read because I'm blind at the same time as fucking apparently illiterate. Yeah, Jeremy fucking cunt. Well, apparently yesterday or the day before, I was listening to a podcast, Radio Times or some shit. He wrote a book with, guess who? Kwasi Kwarteng and Liz Truss. And him and some other person wrote a book about the mad right-wing shit that just took out the pound. Yep, them fucking muppets. And in the election that they just had, his proposal was to cut corporation tax to 15%. Corporation tax. 15%. Now, if you listen to politics, we already have, right now, the lowest corporation tax in the G7. The lowest. And Rishi Sunak said, literally, in the fucking thing, corporation tax has done fuck all for our country, so I'm putting it back up. And you know how much that cost the corporations? 18 billion quid. Do you know what that means, right? So if you're gonna, if I'm playing SimCity and I lower my tax rate for business, oh fuck it, I'll put it. It was 20 odd %. I'm gonna put it down to 19, right? 19%. I'm gonna put it down for business. You know, the people that make the jobs and piss on your shoe and call it rain. Them people, right? I'm gonna lower it to fucking this percent. In the election, leadership election, he said it did fuck all. So that means what he lowered did not even come close to what he got back. In fact, it cost him money. I bet you the revenue went down on that one thing alone. And if you put it back to nominal, so we know how much he got then, don't we? 18 billion quid. Because that's how much it was projected to be if they put it up. And I don't think it's going to be even 18 billion quid. Because think about it, if they're going to tax business who can't afford to pay it, or have to, what are they going to do with that? Well, we all know what they're going to do with it. Cut jobs. Literally, because they're going to have to factor in now that the interest rates and the rates that people pay are going to go up. Like, scratching my head, because it's mad. It's going to go up higher than it would have been, and that was already a stretch. Like, literally, it was. I think we're going to have a mortgage crash in the country, actually. In terms of, like, if it goes up mad, I don't know if people are going to, one, remortgage if you're in that predicament. And you need to remortgage. Or if you want to move house or buy a house, they're going to crash the market. And if you put up too high, people won't even be able to afford their fucking mortgages anyway. And I hope, maybe I think the Bank of England knows, because they can check, clearly, what companies hold in terms of rates and when they're like changing. So, okay, hopefully the Bank of England, because it's independent, knows that and can avoid it. Maybe that's what it was doing when it was fucking buying all the shit. And the Bank of England's told Jeremy Hunt. I hope. This is what I'm praying. These are the, I think this next budget, right, is because he met the Bank of England dude. I think the Bank of England's told him what to do. The Bank of England's gone, you do this, and the pound will just be normal. I reckon. I mean, that's the only thing. Like, I'm wishing for that, but I can't. Like, don't know. George Soros bet against the pound, didn't he? You don't know with the markets. Maybe the Bank of England's just going to get shafted. Someone's going to make loads of money, like George Soros did. What was it, Black Wednesday? But we could have another Black Wednesday. I mean, anything's not off the table at this point, and this government's so shit. Even let's say the fucking markets calm down, she's still toast. There's no fucking way she should win the next election. Ever, ever, ever. So you had to get rid of her now. Put someone in there who's maybe electable. By some fucking Tory voters who were left not crying in the corner because their pensions all just went away. Or they call a general election and get it over with. Either way, they're fucked. There's no way on God's green earth if you're a moderate Tory voter, maybe even a Tory voter you fucking can't stand the Labour Party, you've got to ask yourself this question. Are you fucking kidding me? Can you crash the pound and honestly tell me, the God's honest truth, and tell me that that's normal in terms of how we put up with prime ministers? No fucking way. Theresa May, gobshite. Boris Johnson, like, imagine getting rid of Boris Johnson and thinking, please come back, Boris Johnson. It's like, what the fuck? Like, what? Even the Tories did, like, I wouldn't say all Tories didn't like him. What I'm saying is, like, if you was to think of a Tory narrative of, like, Thatcher, he was never a Thatcher. Most of the Tories hated him in the fucking Tory party because he wasn't Tory enough. He didn't mind splashing the cash. You know why? Because he was fucking popular. He didn't care. It's like, even Rishi Sunak was way more conservative than fucking Boris Johnson was. Boris Johnson just liked to get his dick out of parties at the wrong time, take pictures of his dick and send it to bed. I don't know. He was an idiot, yes. But oh my god. This Truss killed the Queen, killed the Pound, killed Paul Pies. Killed the journalists who were interviewing her the other day. 8-minute fucking press conference. Half of that was taking questions. It's like, what the fuck's going on? And then the Tories are like, can we just have someone else in power? And we're like, can we just have no government at this point? I think they've really ruined it. Like, even as a Tory voter, you just be going, what the actual fuck? Terrible. Fucking terrible. I honestly see calamity at this point. Riots. Generals. I hope we just have a general strike. It'd be fucking easier. Just have a general strike. Get an election. And it'll be done. We'd have, like, we're gonna have, like, people running around the streets just robbing Tesco's. Poor Tesco fella there. They're gonna get robbed. In fact, the guy from Iceland said that a few weeks ago anyway. He said, we've already seen the fucking rates of people robbing in the shop go up. It's just fucking mad. Fucking mad. In 2022, you know what's mad anyway? People were always happy about the fact that we've got food banks. Like, that's not breaking news. Someone should get sacked. There's fucking food banks in Britain. That alone you should get fucking sacked for. I'm agreeing with Rich. Nationalise Greggs, like Jezza said. That was one of his manifesto pledges. Nationalise Greggs. Totally agree. Totally agree. I did love the way that fella said there was only one team on the football pitch. It's true. Honestly, like, for all the prime ministers who we've had, at least you could somehow in your brain, if you watch politics and you're actually sane and not a rabid left or rightist, you can go, okay, that makes sense. Okay, see why that happened. Okay, that was mad, but we can tell why. Like, you can sort of understand the ebbs and flow of Britain, especially with Brexit. I mean, fuck's sake, right? So you can try and take it in your stride. This is just being nuts. I've never seen this happen ever. I grew up under Margaret Thatcher, like, seriously. This makes Margaret Thatcher, like, honestly, if you said to Labour voters, would you rather have Margaret Thatcher or Liz Truss? I swear to God, do you know what the answer would be? Margaret Thatcher. That should be a poll on Twitter. If anybody's got a Twitter account, just make a poll out to your friends who are maybe politically inclined or whatever. I just ask them who would rather have in charge, Liz Truss or Margaret Thatcher. And, you know, as an honest man, I'm going to say, I'm trying to have Margaret Thatcher. At least I know she was ruthless and competent. Like, you knew what Margaret Thatcher was doing. She never hid it from anybody. She's like, oh yeah, you're going on a dole. You know what I mean? I'm going to take your milk. I mean, the fucking memes are endless for Margaret Thatcher, especially if you're on the left. But in terms of, we used to be called the sick man of Europe, right? If you know that saying. And we became like a little booming island, as they all wanted us to be, Singapore on Thames, which is the fucking most fucking hipster shit I've ever heard in my life. But anyway, Singapore on Thames, right? We all want to be Chinese. Whatever, you might as well be racist if you're talking about the Tories. Anyway, if you get the joke. So yeah, these bellends. Just 12 years of growth, no growth. And people still believe they're whack shit. And now they just want to give us a new Prime Minister. Again. Again. After this calamity, like, fine, Boris, everyone knew why Boris should be sacked. He went too far. Right, no, to be fair, no one cared he was shagging somebody or some other dumb shit, right? The wallpaper took the piss, but whatever. He's posh. That's expected, right? We can factor that in. He's a posh, tough cunt. He's a bit of a buffoon. He got Brexit done. Nobody thought COVID was a fucking great thing, unless you're a Tory. In terms of how the government handled it, was fucking garbage. Like, killed millions, probably, because they're fucking inept. That twat was the fucking health secretary at the time, who Thomas Cummins told was a fucking idiot. Oh my god, see, this is the thing. They can't be in power much longer. I can just go on chantings about them all day. Like, literally, how shit that they are. Nah, I think there's going to be mad shit, like riots and general strikes. The government, these Tories need to understand one thing. They're done. And someone said on another fucking thing I was watching a video, governments don't win elections, they lose them. And these have totally lost the next election, so just give up now. Just let's do a fucking Italy. Get out. Just accept that you're done. Stop. Please. Not because I don't like Tories at this point. It's just you're literally killing my nation. You are killing the country with your ineptitude. Just go. It does feel like the 80s all over again. I've been saying this for fucking ages. It feels like the 80s. It feels like I'm stuck in that mad TV show. What the fuck was that TV show called with that dude? You just get trapped in fucking some time loop, some shit. But he's always in the same scenario, but just in a different time. Feels like then. Feels like I'm stuck in the fucking 80s. Laura fucking Kuenssberg pretending not to be a fucking Tory. And then you got people who are business people saying the Tories are fucking stupid. But all my life I've heard that the Tories love the free market, and the free market just literally people fucking elbow the Tories in the jawbone. It's mad. It's fucking mad. Well, to be fair, reading the chat there from Rich, I'm just gonna say I'm happy because I think we've had too much Tory bullshit fucking economics. We just have. I understand why people voted for Brexit, right? I get that. I get it. Theresa May was a fucking disaster anyway. But at least, this is the mad thing as well. At least Boris Johnson was elected. You got to give him that, right? For all his faults, for all his mad shit, for all whatever he did, he was elected by the people of all mad countries, right? He was elected. This fucking dumb bitch. Nope. Nope. You know the mad thing is, if they would have called an early general election and put her in front of Keir Starmer, this is the scary bit. Keir Starmer would have lost to her. And he would have got an extra, 3 years? Give or take? Right? If it was an election now, the next election would be 2027. She's basically done a Gordon Brown. I don't know who Black Wednesday was, can't remember. That was before my time. Was it? I'm old. Anyway, point being is, it's like a Black Wednesday and Gordon Brown at the same time. Because Gordon Brown should never have held an election. Held one and lost. She needs one because no one wants her. And now they can't get rid of her. We're fucked. Alright, I'm done. My rant's over. I've been ranting longer than the fucking show's been on. Bye. Back tomorrow.